My name is Jesse, and this channel is all about getting you gents that beautiful younger girlfriend. Now, I got this question the other day. Hey, Jesse, I'm actually seeing 3 different women right now, and they all love me. The problem is it's very time-consuming juggling these 3 women at the same time. So what do you think about creating a harem situation where I have all 3 women living with me with the possibility of bringing in yet another woman? Maybe I'd get a big king-size bed for all of us to sleep in. What would actually save me and cut down on the drama and the juggling of separate relationships? All right, so is having a harem of 2 or 3 or 4 cute girls all living together with you worth it? Is it worth it to have 2 or 3 or 4 cute girls all sharing one big bed with you? What are the pros and the cons of all living under one roof? What are the advantages and the disadvantages? And if you've ever thought about having your own personal harem, leave me a comment below and be sure to watch all the way to the end of this video and let me know after what you hear today, after what I tell you, if you're still just as enthusiastic about the idea or if you have backed away from it. So again, should you just get one girlfriend or date multiple women and keep them all separate from one another? Or should you have 3 or 4 girls all in the same bed, all under the same roof, dating them all at the same time? What should you do? Well, the answer is going to depend on a couple of factors that I'm going to lay out in this video for you right now. So let's find out which option is going to work best for you in your particular situation. I'm also going to go over some mistakes and some traps that you want to avoid, drawing from my 20 years of coaching experience with hundreds of guys that I've worked with over the years in all kinds and sorts of different relationships. So that if you do decide to live with more than one girl at a time, it's not going to blow up in your face. It's not going to turn into some nightmarish drama fest for you. Now, gentlemen, living with a couple of girls, it's not as far-fetched as it might sound. And this is what you have to understand about women. Women would rather share a high-value guy. Right? If you can give her a fun experience, if you can give her good sex and financial stability, and she can see that you can pull other women like her, women would rather share a high-value guy than date the typical dude who can't give her those things. And that's why you're seeing less of these one-on-one pairings of traditional couples, of one man and one woman, and you're seeing more and more of the top 10% most valuable guys getting all the girls, because women would rather share that guy. And by the way, gentlemen, if you are interested in building a harem or simply just having 3 hot, fun girls you can call up anytime, have them come over for some fun, go right here to youngerpartner.com and you can apply for my program where we get you on track for dating the kinds of girls you really want in just 8 to 12 weeks. Even if there's a big age gap there, even if you're an average looking dude, using a unique system I've developed called visual neural programming to rip out all those negative beliefs and insecurities holding you back. I show you how to meet new, fun, receptive girls in your day-to-day life and turn those girls into loyal and loving girlfriends in a way that's reliable and automated. So it's kind of like going through the drive-thru of McDonald's and just getting your burger and fries. Fast, simple, and consistent. We got a great community of guys in there as well, and I'm seeing these guys make win after win, week after week. So if you want to work with me and get yourself rocking and rolling with some new hotties over the next couple of weeks, simply apply. I'll put a link in the description below for you as well. But here's the truth, gentlemen. Most men, the very first mistake that they make with this in terms of building a harem is that most men are so damn desperate that the very first girl they get into the bedroom, the very first woman that pays any attention to him at all, they start simping for her. And they start simping for her big. They throw themselves into being her boyfriend. They're totally enamored with her. And once they sleep with her, they pretty much give up that dream of having multiple girlfriends or having a harem. And that is most men out there. That's most guys. But let's say that you're not like most guys. Let's say that you can remain strong, you date multiple women. Well, here's the first problem that you can run into. The first problem that can blow this whole thing up, right? Let's first look at the practicality of harems historically in the past, because the past can really shed some light on what can go wrong in a harem. You know, there's this popular image in the mainstream media that the Sultan would sit up on his throne chair and all the female concubines would gather around him, just lounging around all together in the big throne room. The women talking to each other, getting their nails done, being pampered. And this stereotypical image of a harem couldn't be further from the truth. Because the reality is, historically, in real harems, the women would gossip, they'd backstab each other, they'd sabotage each other, and they generally hated one another. And they would all compete very ruthlessly, in fact, with each other for favor from the Sultan and attention from the Sultan. So in real, actual historical harems, to stop all the infighting between the girls, to prevent the women from literally killing each other, and to tamp down on all that interpersonal drama, the harem palace was not a communal space that the women all hung out together in. So in actuality, each of the concubines, they each had their own living space, they each had their own separate living quarters, they each had their own little apartment. Right? The girls were all physically separated from one another most of the day. And that was to keep down the infighting and the jealousy, to keep the infighting and the jealousy to an absolute minimum. So we'll get to what that means for you in just a second. But the second thing you have to understand about harems historically was they were very expensive to maintain. The Sultan, the harem owner, he would actually spend enormous riches on giving women the best food, giving the women the best clothes, giving them the best servants. For example, there was this dude named Mehmed III back in the 1600s. This dude was the emperor of the Ottoman Empire, and he spent so much money maintaining his concubines that he actually devalued his country's currency. And there were riots in Istanbul for years to come. So these big harems were very expensive undertakings to maintain. The third thing about these harems historically was that they had very strong boundaries, right? These harems were essentially prisons with forced marriages off to the Sultan. The girls were guarded by eunuchs, and the women had to stay in line because if they ever cheated on or ever strayed away from the Sultan, they could be executed. These girls could get themselves killed. So the boundaries that held these women in place were very set. The boundaries were very strong. There were very strict limits on what the women could do or couldn't do, how they could behave or couldn't behave. So what can we really learn from history here? Well, let's take the very first one, the infighting among women. In today's world, things are far more complex than they were back in the 1600s. You take two different women, and these two different women can have very different life goals. These two different women could be moving in different directions. Maybe one woman you're seeing, she wants to be a housewife and have kids. Another woman you're seeing wants to go back to school. Another woman you're seeing wants to start a career. Another wants to be an entrepreneur. Another woman just wants to party her ass off and be taken care of. And these are all conflicting goals. And when you put 2 or 3 or 4 different women under the same roof, in the same house, in a small space together, enormous tension in the group is going to develop. You're going to have jealousy among the girls, catfighting among the girls, backstabbing among the girls, unless all the women are somehow enlightened or into deep self-development work. But more likely than all the women being somehow enlightened, that's not going to happen, right? One of the women is going to be combative by nature, most likely. One of the girls could have psychological trauma growing up. One of the girls might not be that mature, acting like a child, causing chaos, causing drama. One of the women could have depression or BPD or various addictions or bad habits. You might find personality conflicts among the girls, right? All in all, having 3 or 4 women all living under the same roof, all in the same bed, it sounds pretty cool, but you really are opening a big can of worms here. It's an opportunity for these girls to constantly butt heads. They're fighting over the man's attention and sabotaging one another. So when it comes down to it, you really have only 2 possible solutions here. And solution number 1 is to have a really, really big house. A big house where you can give each of the women their own separate space, where each of the women have their own separate bedroom and their own separate bathroom. And that's the bare minimum. So if you want a 3-woman harem here, 3 girls living all in the same house, at a bare minimum, you need to be able to afford a 4-bedroom house with 4 bedrooms. 1 bedroom from each of the girls and 1 bedroom for yourself. That is the bare minimum. And if you can't afford that, then I'm sorry to tell you, you can't afford to have a harem, and you should not even try. Because of this infighting problem up here, if the women don't have their own personal space to escape to, they're simply going to tear each other apart. The environment is going to be too claustrophobic. It's going to get too toxic. And the girls are going to peel off and leave. So that's number one. You need to have a big enough space to give each of the girls their own living quarters, their own bedroom, their own bathroom, just to escape from one another. Now, the second solution here is just not to have a harem at all. Right? Just keep dating women the regular, conservative, traditional way, where you let each of the women pay to live in their own place. And what that does is it keeps the women all separated from one another. And that's frankly what 99% of men do. They just offload the living costs onto the women themselves instead of having a harem. All right, so what else can we learn from history here? Well, we learned that the sultans paid enormous sums of money just to keep their harems going. And if you're going to have all these girls living together under one roof, you really do have to bring a lot of value to the table. So you need to have a high income. Because if you're having trouble financially, if you are financially struggling, these women are just not going to put up with that. Now, the solution to this, if you're broke or on a moderate income, is simply to date all the women separately from one another. So you see Susie on Saturday, you see Megan on Sunday, you see Jenny on Tuesday, you take them out on inexpensive dates, or you simply have dinner at your place, you bang the girls' brains out, you show them a good time in the bedroom, and you can do that all quite economically and cheaply, almost on a minimum wage. But running a harem is a totally different story, gentlemen. Not only do you need a big space, a big house to put all these girls into so they don't tear each other apart, but to keep these girls happy, you gotta buy them nice clothes, you gotta buy them good food, now you have to take them out, you have to go on trips with them. If you try to run a harem on the cheap, the girls are going to start to think to themselves, well, I could just get a husband all to myself who's going to pay for everything I want and not have to fight with the other girls for every single little penny. If you try to run a harem on the cheap, the women are going to start to peel off and your whole thing is going to unravel. The third thing that we can learn from harems is that they had very strong boundaries. Harems were essentially prisons with these strict codes of conduct of what was socially acceptable behavior for women to do. Now, even traditional marriages back in the day, those were also essentially prisons with strict codes of conduct for women, but that's what held harems together. It's also what held traditional marriages together, those strong boundaries. And what we can learn from this is a harem with multiple girls all living under the same roof. You need to set strong boundaries. You must set strong boundaries. You must set strong rules to follow and rule with an iron fist. You need to be like that oak tree with deep roots into the ground that sets the lead, that sets the tone, where you're steady like a rock. Disciplining the girls when they get out of line. Disciplining the girls when they show bad behavior. And yes, you can have fun time with the girls, but it's not necessarily always going to be a pretty thing. So if you think that your harem is just going to be fun, you're in for a rude awakening, right? When those girls start acting up, when they start acting badly, and you just act like this passive wallflower and let anything go, kind of like you're a hippie, these girls are going to run you over. The girls are going to eat you alive. And your harem is just going to quickly fall apart, right? The girls are going to peel off if they sense or perceive that you are a weak man, if they sense or perceive that there aren't strict boundaries being reinforced. And look, if you're too much of a nice guy, if women keep ghosting you or treating you like you're invisible, if they walk all over you just to get free stuff out of you, if you're not meeting the kind of women you really want and being treated like a king, if you need help rewiring your brain to become that charismatic bad boy, that kind of man that women really want, I want you to go right here to youngerpartner.com and apply to work with me. I got over 20 years of experience coaching men just like yourself, not only to get the girl of their dreams, but to keep the woman of their dreams and get that hottie to be your loyal and loving girlfriend where she won't even look at another man. So getting back to this idea of having all the girls underneath the same roof, for all these reasons here, you really see real harems out in the real world. Because a lot of these headaches can be automatically solved just by keeping the girls separated from one another, keeping the girls in their own living quarters that the girls maintain and pay for themselves, and having almost no boundaries, where you just let the girls do whatever they want, live however they want to live. So that's far less headaches, it's far less costly, it takes up less of your time, it means you don't need to be the big mean boss, and you get the same girls and the same amount of sex without all the downsides of having a harem. So while having a harem sounds like this fun, interesting fantasy, in reality, it's not going to be practical or desirable for 99% of the men out there. All right, gentlemen, since you enjoyed this video, you want to watch these two videos next. How women will use your enthusiasm against you to rip your heart out. And this is very messed up, but you got to watch this so you don't get hurt. And second, what to say when she tells you you are too old for me. Because if you are talking to cute younger women, you are going to get this objection, and you need to have a good response in your back pocket that you can take out to actually increase her attraction for you. So go watch these two videos right now.